Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating puzzle within the SASB standards for the electrical and electronic equipment industry. We're going to focus on a critical, yet honestly often misunderstood piece of the puzzle: how to make raw ESG data actually useful. Because let's face it, reporting numbers is one thing, but making sense of them is entirely another. By the end of this, you're going to see exactly how we transform massive data sets into actionable, comparable insights. Think about this fundamental problem for a second. How on earth do you compare the sustainability footprint of a massive multinational conglomerate against a mid-sized boutique competitor? It's literally like comparing the energy bill of a towering skyscraper to a backyard garden shed. They're just operating in completely different stratospheres of scale. If you're just glancing at the raw totals, say the total gigajoules of energy consumed or total metric tons of hazardous waste generated, the giant global factory is always, without fail, going to look worse. Their raw numbers will be exponentially higher. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. That absolutely does not mean they are less efficient. Actually, they could be running the most highly optimized facility on the planet, but the sheer volume of their output completely masks that efficiency. So, here's our quick roadmap to solve this comparability conundrum. We're going to look at the comparability problem, meet the activity metrics, break down units produced and employee headcount, and finally look at the normalization equation. Let's kick things off by looking closely at the comparability problem itself. The big takeaway right out of the gate is that lower total energy consumption or a smaller waste footprint doesn't automatically mean a company is greener or better managed. I mean, it might just mean they produce way less stuff. If competitor A uses half the gigajoules of competitor B, but produces 1/10 of the product, competitor A is actually incredibly inefficient. Relying solely on raw metrics completely distorts the reality of how these places are operating. Which brings us right to our solution, meeting the activity metrics. To really grasp why operational context is so crucial, picture a high-volume production facility. You've got a counter rapidly ticking up as units roll off the assembly line. Boom, 10,000 units. Scaling up insanely fast as manufacturing accelerates to 500,000. And before you know it, you're heading 2.5 million units. That right there vividly shows the absolute massive scale and complexity we're dealing with in the electrical and electronic equipment industry. When you're churning out millions of components, whether that's switchboards or HVAC systems, your raw resource consumption is just going to be immense. And this is exactly what the SASB standard solves for. It gives us Table 2, which outlines the two specific activity metrics we have to use to normalize all this data. We've got RTEEO00.A for tracking units produced and RTEEO00.B for tracking employees. These are your essential tools for making an actual meaningful comparison between companies. Let's dig into that first baseline, metric A, which is all about the physical output. So the SASB standard strictly defines activity metric RTEE00.A as the quantitative number of units produced. But it doesn't just stop at one grand total. It requires this number to be broken down by relevant product categories. And why is that? Well, grouping completely different types of equipment together would totally defeat the purpose of normalizing the data in the first place. The standard specifically requires segmentation into categories like energy generation, energy delivery, lighting, and indoor climate control electronics. And honestly, this segmentation is brilliant. Building a massive industrial-grade energy transformer for the grid uses vastly different resources and energy inputs than mass assembling smart indoor thermostats or lighting fixtures. By breaking the units down into categories, analysts can compare energy delivery manufacturers directly against other energy delivery manufacturers, guaranteeing a true apples-to-apples comparison. Moving right along to metric B, which shifts our focus over to the human side of things. RTE000B is defined super simply as the total quantitative number of employees. While units produced tells us about manufacturing scale, employee headcount gives us a really solid baseline for human capital scale and the overall organizational footprint. Imagine being a global HR manager looking at a sprawling organizational chart. Knowing an operation requires 150,000 employees puts their total facility footprint into immediate practical perspective. It contextualizes those metrics that scale with human presence. Think about the facility heating, cooling, or the baseline grid electricity that keeps a massive global workforce operating every single day. All right, so how do we actually put this all together? Let's check out the normalization equation. The math here is actually pretty elegant. Step 1, you take your raw total outputs, like total gigajoules of energy consumed or metric tons of hazardous waste. Step 2, you divide that raw total by your activity metric, so the number of units produced in a specific category or the employee headcount. And step 3, that gives you the intensity metric. Suddenly, you aren't looking at total gigajoules, you're looking at gigajoules per unit produced. You've just completely stripped away the distortion of scale and revealed the true underlying efficiency of the operation. And that's why this is an absolute game changer for an investor or analyst. Without normalizing data through these specific activity metrics, raw ESG data is practically useless for comparing competitors. It's just noise. The SASB framework purposefully pairs the sustainability metrics with these activity metrics so the market can actually reward the companies operating the smartest rather than just praising the ones with the smallest market share. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to take away from today's explainer. The next time you're digging into a sustainability report for a major manufacturer, what are you going to focus on? Are you going to get distracted by those massive raw output numbers? Or are you going to take that extra step, use the activity metrics, and do the math to uncover the company's true intensity? Remember, the real story is always in the intensity. Thanks for hanging out with me for this deep dive, and keep looking for the real data behind the numbers.